sustain, and pass down legacy wealth. High school seniors can apply for this year's scholarship awards at parksideedc.org. Scholarships will be awarded at Parkside EDC's Gospel/Jazz Brunch on Sunday, April the 27th. For details, tickets, or donations, please visit parksideedc.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I heard him say, nothing's ever promised tomorrow today. From the shy like Tim, it's a harder way. So this is in the name of love, like Robert say. Before you ask me to go get a job today, can I at least get a raise on the minimum wage? And I know the government administer AIDS, so I guess we just pray like the minister say. Alu Akbar and throwing some hot cars. The things we seen on the screen, it's not ours. But these from the hood, so these dreams not far. Where I'm from, the dope boys is the rock stars, but they can't cop cars without seeing cop cars. I guess they want us all behind bars. I know it, and I heard them say, nothing's ever promised.
In this hour, a conversation about Afro-pessimism. Afro-pessimism in this particular and peculiar American moment with award-winning writer, poet, and UC Irvine African-American Studies professor Frank B. Wilderson III. That first hour was fire. I mean, straight fire with Richard Wolff. I love that dude. Again, in case you missed any part of that conversation, get the book, Understanding Capitalism. You will not be disappointed, I can assure you. And I suspect you won't be disappointed by this conversation either, as we talk once again for the hour about Afro-pessimism, particularly in this moment. And you think about what Richard Wolff had to say. If you were listening to that first hour, it ain't going to be hard to link hour one and hour two today. Watch how this works. Professor Wilson, good to have you on, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Tavis?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well, and I am delighted to be in conversation with you. I think it's important. I want to always make sure, it is my way to always attempt to make sure that the audience and the guest and the interlocutor, yours truly, are on the same page. And so I think I want to start with a broad definition, or a more specific definition. It's up to you. You're the expert here. When we talk about Afro-pessimism as we move through this hour, what are we talking about? Define that for me as you will, and then I will jump from there, sir.
Okay. Well, in colloquial terms, I would say Afro-pessimism is an ear trumpet, a way of listening to the uniqueness and specificity of suffering of Black people. And, so for example, Afro-pessimism the pessimism is not a emotional dispensation. It's, for some people, they can engage it at a kind of layperson's level, and I would suggest that they get my latest book from Liver Right. It's a trade publication called Afro-Pessimism, and it links memoirs with the first principles of the critical theory so that people get an understanding of how Afro-Pessimism is a highly abstract but very well grounded critique. By critique, I mean assessment, not condemnation or criticism, or negative criticism, but critique of both Marxism and psychoanalysis as being important ways to understand, say, the suffering in the term of psychoanalysis, the suffering that someone experiences in familial situation. In Marxism, you just had Richard Wolff on, the suffering that the working class experiences by way of exploitation and alienation of their labor power. But it goes one step further. It says one of the things that these two very highly respected and widespread modes of understanding how people suffer in a unethical world, one thing that they don't understand is that Black suffering is not adequately explained through either of these two modes. To say that Black people suffer because we're economically deprived is an important way of thinking about it, but one has to go one step further. And so Afro-pessimism began as a intellectual, theoretical, highly academic critique of the ways in which an explanation of economic exploitation does not really ground one well enough in an understanding of how Black people suffer in their body as a result of slavery. It then picked up, unfortunately and unfortunately, because there were so many spectacles, Instagram videos and YouTube videos of Black death in the early part of the 2000s. And so I and others began roaming the globe from Vienna to Cape Town to London to Montreal, giving workshops on Afro-pessimism, in which we were trying to explain to people that yes, Black people need relief from police murders, but we also have to understand that the structure of an anti-Black world makes two things. One, anti-Blackness structurally different than white supremacy, and two, violence against Black people as a necessary form of ritual renewal for the human race. It's not a form of discrimination. And so that was something that kind of, the linkage between a highly academic critique of, hey, economic exploitation really doesn't explain what's called the libidinal economy, why the collective unconscious of the world is anti-Black. The last time I was on your show in 2023, you asked me something about, was there any hope for America? And in the last words I ended with, I said, America is organically anti-Black. Well, Afro-pessimism explains how anti-Blackness is the genome, the organism of the world. Yes, go ahead.
No, hold that thought. That's a good place to get in. I think it's going to be a rich hour. Hour one was fire, and this is going to be fire as well. I've got all kind of questions already. We're going to spend this hour talking about Afro-pessimism, why this ear trumpet, I love that, why this ear trumpet matters, particularly in this American moment. We're going to talk about the way that Afro-pessimism forces us to rethink some of our basic assumptions about our society, indeed about the world. Going to be a good hour with Professor Frank B. Wilderson III on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Hi, I'm Joe Montaigne. Let's talk about veteran homelessness, because it's not just a housing issue, it's a human issue. Right now, we need LA property owners to open their doors and give veterans a safe place to call home. With guaranteed rent and dedicated support, you can be part of the solution. Learn how you can help. Email houseurourvets@lacity.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their program. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black. Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
Tavis Smiley continues right now in conversation with Frank B. Wooderson III. Delighted to have him on to talk about his text and his work. His workshops, indeed, around this notion of Afro-pessimism. And there is no time like the present, I think, to be unpacking this, and no time like the present for a need to unpack Afro-pessimism in the world that we are inhabiting right about now. Black suffering is everywhere, and it's on the increase, sadly. We are suffering, as Frank Wooderson said earlier, in an unethical world. And so we're going to navigate our way through this hour as best we can. I'm going to try to keep up as best I can with Frank Wooderson III. Let me start with this ear trumpet. I love the phrase you used earlier, ear trumpet. Tell me why this ear trumpet matters particularly, especially in this American moment.
Well, I think it matters in every American moment. I will talk about this American moment also. But let me just say that I don't know if I said it before. The pessimism is not meant to denote or connote an emotional dispensation. By pessimism, we mean a pessimism of the intellect, a pessimism of the explanatory power of all the other isms. Let me repeat that: a pessimism of the explanatory power of all the other isms to fully explain Black suffering. It's not throwing economic depredation out with the bathwater. It's not throwing psychoanalysis out with the bathwater. My first two books engage those very well, and show why they're important, and also how is it that a sentient being, a person who came into this world as cargo, in other words, not as a human being, as cargo, as an object of accumulation, still exists in the collective unconscious as cargo, even though the general conscious mind of civil society says we're citizens and people. That's number one. Number two, the violence against Black people by the police and self-appointed vigilantes is not predicated on the same structure of antagonism that the violence against other people of color is predicated on, or the working class. Other people of color suffer from white supremacy, which means that they have been marked as transgressing the rules of the state, so-called illegal immigration, or agitating for workers' rights. Black people suffer anti-Blackness because our violence is predicated on the collective unconscious thinking of us as transgressed because of our skin, not transgressed because of our actions. That's a hell of a thing to get one's head around.
Oh, yeah.
Because it means that you have to start thinking about police murders differently if you're Black than if you're Latinx and not Black. So what is happening today, to come full circle to your question, is that it's not that we're in a new dispensation. It's that the intensity of the anti-Blackness which makes America America has blossomed in ways that we have not seen since Trump won and Andrew Jackson. It has blossomed to the point where now the fascistic project of the Trump number two has got its act together, and it has understood that the power to pose the question is the greatest power of all. And I think it was either Max Weber or Paulo Freire who said that. I don't know where the quote actually comes from. The power to pose the question is the greatest power of all. So these attacks now, holding the museums and holding educational institutions hostage for their DEI initiatives, if they don't get rid of them, is actually deeper than the surface level effects where there won't be many more black people or people of color in these institutions.
Yeah.
What they're actually saying is that we're going through a form of economic and political coercion, we are going to transform epistemological power, the power to say what constitutes knowledge, the very power to say what constitutes knowledge, and the power to say how that knowledge is organized. That's what's happening. And what that means is that, and I'm going to keep it black right now, what that means for us, and why I believe Afro-pessimism is so important, what it means for us is that we black people have trouble thinking of ourselves as being worthy of our suffering. Sometimes we're embarrassed to think of our suffering as different than the suffering of others, even though we know that the anti-black violence is not catalyzed by the same idea of transgression that anti-immigrant violence is catalyzed by. Anti-black violence is predicated on the collective unpsyche, the collective unconscious, or the collective, what is called the libidinal economy, I'll just stick to collective unconscious, needs the spectacle of various moments of ritualistic black murders to make all others feel, whew, okay, all right. If that happened to me, I would have had to done something wrong. What we did wrong was being black. I'll stop there if you want to.
No, let me get in. I'm glad. Thank you for the pause, because I didn't want to interrupt. I got a few things I want to probe right quick.
Okay.
Let me come to this last point you made about black suffering, black death, black murder. And when you were talking, my mind went immediately to that Kingian phrase, that Kingian quote that you know so well, that unearned suffering is redemptive. That's King. That unearned suffering is redemptive. So much of the suffering that black people have and to this day still endure is, to my mind, unearned. So is King right that unearned suffering is redemptive? And if so, for us, how? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what do you think he meant by that before I say something?
Yeah, I think again, in the best way I can put it is simply this: that if in life you are being put upon, you are being made to suffer for things that you could not control, for example, the melanin in your skin, or if you're being made to suffer for standing on your immutable principles. I think King would argue that standing on any suffering that's brought on to you for standing on, again, those principles, for standing in your truth. If you're made to suffer for that, somewhere down the road, that suffering is redemptive. That's one way to read it. The other way to read it is, as I suggested a moment ago, if you have melanin in your skin, that's the point you're making, right? That our suffering is different than anybody else's, born of the fact that we have not born of some action, but born simply of the melanin in our skin. So if black folk are being put upon in that way, if they're being made to suffer in that way, is King right? That sort of unearned suffering. We didn't ask for this. We didn't do anything to deserve this. But is that somehow, somewhere down the road, redemptive for us?
Unfortunately, I rather than challenge the statement, I'll make a shrewd.
No, go where you want to go. you have agency, and the good news is Dr. King ain't here to push back on you. So
yeah, I know. But I mean, look, I don't believe in redemption, and I'm not a Christian, and
whoa, stop. No, you are an academic. And you are a learned man. You don't have to be a Christian. This is not about Christology. You ain't got to be a Christian to believe in redemption. Malcolm X is an example of redemption.
Yeah, I felt in my bones when you said there was something highly theological about that. But I'll put it aside from it.
Sure.
What I'm going to say to you is this.
Okay.
I fundamentally believe that blackness comes into the world as a site of what we call gratuitous violence. In other words, the bodies that are marked as black are bodies that are open to the whims, whether those whims are pleasurable, what Frantz Fanon calls negrophilia, or whether those whims treat blackness as a phobic object. Black people are a stimulus to anxiety. That would be an example of that. And I fundamentally believe that the stability of the world is predicated on the instability of Black life. And so what I'm trying to say is that, and I've said this in greater theoretical detail with, lots of texts and things like that in my second academic monograph, and I've said it in different ways in my last book, Afro-Pessimism. But what Afro-Pessimism argues is that for there to be a group of people who know themselves to have rights, to know themselves to be possessive, to be in possession of consent, consent that could be violated, there has to be a group of people who have no rights, have no consent, and whose bodies are, to quote Saidiya Hartman, an extension of the master's prerogative. And what I'm trying to say is that 1865 did not change that. I challenge people on the left to think very seriously and rigorously about the difference between Black suffering and non-Black suffering, the difference between white supremacy and anti-Blackness, the difference between economic exploitation and the idea that someone 1,400 years ago came into the world as cargo and is still cargo in the collective unconscious. There is no pattern for redemption there. The only thing that can happen is probably not permissible to actually say on radio.
I think you've just answered this question now. If I'm hearing you correctly, you believe that Black people are still cargo. I mean, certainly we were cargo on those slave ships, but one could think about Black people as cargo with regard to gentrification. We're being moved about. One can think of us as cargo when you think about the prison industrial complex. One can think of Black folk as cargo when you think about deportation. But my read, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you believe that Black people are still, in the minds of many, seen as cargo.
Yes, and fundamentally, the unfortunate thing about the 20th century and the 21st century, and we're going to soon be out of that, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't. But the unfortunate thing about the 20th century and the 21st century is that the unconscious mind doesn't speak through the conscious mind. It's after the Jewish Holocaust, Frantz Fanon writes, after the Jewish Holocaust, civil society becomes embarrassed by certain statements that this is a white man's world, But in the 19th century, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind was fully calibrated. It was not disjointed, so that Andrew Jackson and Justice Taney could actually speak the unconsciousness of white nationalism that has come to us through Ike, Goldwater, Reagan, and now Trump. And basically, what Taney said was when he sent Dred Scott back to slavery. We might have talked about this 2 years ago, but I'll say it again, because I think it structures unconscious thought that governs civil society now. I'll say it again. I think this quote structures unconscious thought that governs civil society today. And basically what Taney said was, I disagree with the lower court that said Dred Scott should be free because he went to Minnesota and that was free territory. As a Supreme Court justice, I disagree with the other lower court that said Dred Scott should go back to slavery because his master did not manumit him, did not free him. Why do I say that I disagree with both lower courts? He says, I disagree with both lower courts because they treated Dred Scott as a subject of jurisprudence. And one has to remember that the lowest form of humanity is the Native American. There's nothing below that. Below that is the slave, the Black. The Black does not come from political community. The Black comes from Africa where there is no community. And so I'm chastising both lower courts for seeing Dred Scott as a subject of rights and claims. Dred Scott is not a subject of rights and claims. Black people are our extension, the extensions of our prerogative. And when you make that mistake, and you bring Black people into the conversation of rights and claims, you run the risk of destroying the stable fabric of what it means to be human by bringing a non-human into it. What I'm trying to say, Tavis, is that very clear way of chastising the lower courts and saying this is a sentient being who is a thing.
Yeah.
The Native Americans is a sentient being who is a degraded human. That is still prevalent. That governs the world today.
No, I hear that, and by that definition, then one could conclude that that Black people are still, to your earlier point, cargo. When we come forward, I do want to probe this notion of Black suffering in just for a few more minutes here. And I want to ask specifically what Frank B. Wooderson III's view is, what his diagnosis is of Black suffering in this moment. What is his diagnosis of Black suffering in this particular moment? We're talking broadly about Afro-pessimism, and this is getting deep. More when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
Experience adventure at Palm Springs Aerial Tramway. Ride the world's largest rotating tram car. Explore over 50 miles of scenic trails in pristine wilderness. Dine at 8,500 feet with awe-inspiring views and get that perfect souvenir. Adventure at its peak. Learn more at pstramway.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers got it done last night and they flexed their muscles in the process. In a very physical game at Crypto.com, 46 fouls were called. The Lakers beat up Minnesota 94-85 to even up their first-round series at a game apiece. Another strong performance for Luka Doncic, 31 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists. LeBron finished with 21 points. The Lakers were perfect from the free throw line, making all 20 of their attempts. A major factor in the Lakers' win was their perimeter defense. In Game 1, Minnesota made 21 three-pointers. They made only 5 of 25 last night. On nearly every attempt, a Lakers defender had a hand in their face at the three-point line. The next two games are in Minneapolis. Game 3 is Friday night. Let's see if the Lakers can maintain this newfound defensive intensity. Game 3 for the Clippers in Denver is Thursday night at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Imagine a photograph of your favorite place in California. Then right in the middle of it, one piece of litter. Litter has no place in our lives, not one piece. Together, let's change that. Clean California. Zero litter is the goal. CleanCA.com.
At Exquisite Family Mortuary, we know how overwhelming it can be planning a meaningful farewell for your loved one. Secure your peace of mind by calling Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. From traditional funeral services to memorials to direct cremation, pre-needs, and more. Call Charlotte White at Exquisite Family Mortuary for Southern hospitality in Southern California. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. Exquisite Family Mortuary is located nearby in Inglewood, California. Exquisite Family Mortuary, where your loved one becomes our loved one.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
When the flames subside, who ensures that the stories endure? At KBLA Talk 1580, we're committed to preserving the voices that shape our community. We know people have short memories, and as long as this Black Talk radio station is on the air, we will not let Altadena be forgotten. We are honored to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will officially archive our recent town hall alongside every episode of Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr. This is the show of record, the definitive source for tracking Altadena's roots, resilience, recovery, and reunion. These stories will now live on for students, scholars, researchers, and journalists seeking truth and legacy in the months and years to come. Because history isn't just made, it's honored, it's recorded, and it's passed forward. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
After producing an award-winning climate justice campaign in 2024, KBLA Talk 1580 has gone all in on its 2025 Climate Justice plus Black Health Initiative. April is Minority Health Month, and Urban Family Focus, in partnership with Providence Health Systems, presents The Heart of the Matter. Providence doctors and health equity officers will participate in informative and life-changing conversations on hypertension, health equity, behavioral health, and community engagement. Don't miss these empowering conversations on Urban Family Focus every Saturday in April at 7 and Sunday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Sponsored by Providence, Southern California's largest and most comprehensive health care network. We've got a lot to talk about on KBLA Talk 1580. Download the KBLA 1580 app or log in to KBLA1580.com. I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. On KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley, an award-winning writer, poet, and UC Irvine African-American Studies professor Frank B. Wilderson III, talking about Afro-pessimism. Afro-pessimism has one basic object of study, a diagnosis of black suffering. In this American moment, what is your diagnosis of black suffering, Professor Wilderson?
Well, I think it's on two levels. One is the immediate kind of lived experience. And I think as Black people historically around the world, but I'm going to concentrate in the interest of time right here in this country, we go through peaks and valleys of suffering. So a valley might be the mid to late 1700s, the 18th century, where so many Black people lived on plantations with extended families. Mm-hmm. And it was so, it was not workers, they were still slaves, but many people began to kind of imagine themselves as hyper-exploited workers, and they developed skills, and they knew where their grandma was, and grandchildren, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the 18th century, for about 30 years, we have this churning under, where the violence against the Black slave intensifies in a way that looks like the Middle Passage. And you've got two things, like 1 million people between the ages of 18 and 25 being moved in coffles from the eastern seaboard down to the areas of Louisiana, Alabama, that kind of thing. So the total disruption of what people used to call families, think of themselves as families. And then we had something like, in the beginning of that period, 389,000 Black people below the Mason-Dixon line. And in 30 years, it grew to 4 million. What happened? There was forced sex, forced procreation like cattle, under pain of dismemberment or death. So we were bred from 389,000 in a violent world that rape and incarceration can't even begin to talk about until we grew to 4 million people in less than 2 generations. What I'm trying to say is that the actual structure of our suffering didn't change from the moment of relative ease, in quotes, to the moment of deep, deep reincarnation of the violence. And that hasn't changed at all. But we're in this moment of this kind of deep, intense resuscitation of this violence, where the police know that the president has their back, so that means the greater precarity that we're going to experience in terms of our bodies, just walking around wondering who's going to shoot us and when. The sense that our children are going to be demobilized in ways that we could never have imagined. If Trump is able to hold the K through 12 hostage to his you get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or else you lose federal funding. Well, there goes school lunches. There goes psychological counseling for kids. There goes all kinds of kind of tutoring programs. Okay, and that is going to have a profound effect. But I think. So that's the level of the lived experience. We're in for a 4 years of an intensification of anti-Black violence, and the freedom of expression than we had before. But what really bothers me, as much if not more than that, Tavis, is that things like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we will not have the capacity to critique those. We will continue to think of those things like as progressive advances, as opposed to thinking of them as neoliberal containment strategies. And these are symbolic reforms that replace what we had before, material commitments. This is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is soft. It's voluntary. It's non-binding in its language, and it does not allow us to. It is not a means of analysis that allows us to think about racial inequality as systemic. And so that's just an example of how our minds will go. Many years ago, in 1989, I was a grad student at Columbia, and I was in the public library doing some research in Brooklyn, and a young Black woman in high school was in line in front of me at the reference librarian desk, and she said, I have a project that I'm working on for my junior class. I'm a junior in high school. It's on an organization called the Black Panthers. Where would I find something like that? And the white reference librarian said to her, you need to go look under criminal. And I tapped that young woman on the shoulder and I said, I'm a grad student at Columbia. Let's ignore this woman. I actually went to after-school programs with the Black Panthers in 1969 and 1970 as a young teenager. Let me talk to you about the Panthers, and I'll show you why she had it all wrong. What I'm thinking is that the future is going to be us thinking less about systemic change, us arguing more about the immediate response to our immediate suffering, and our children not having the capacity that I was taught when I was 14 years old in 1970 to think against the system and critique the system.
I'm glad you shared that story. Those anecdotal stories always work in conversations like these. And it made me think, and so I want to ask right quick here. I got about 2 minutes now. We'll continue, of course, when we come forward. But in these 2 minutes, unpack, if you will, what your read is, what your view is of Trump's, how about I put this, Trump's Orwellian assault on Black history, the Panthers and beyond.
Well, that's the real crux of the matter, because here's where the fascism has not been able to say exactly what it means. it has to get rid of the question, or let me put it differently, it has to get rid of the power of Black intellectuals and Black activists to pose the question of Black suffering. Because it's a question that it can't answer without saying what it really means. In other words, it can't answer without saying, we just hate Black people because they're Black, because they need to be slaves. That's what Andrew Jackson said. Right now, he's at this liminal point where he's got to talk about people who do things bad, in quotes, not people who are bad in their skin. And all of this assault on the ways in which we have thought about and made our history of struggle is his way, as I said before, of sliding under the radar and grasping the power of epistemological power, the power to say what knowledge is and how it will be organized.
We've been talking in this hour, for the better part of this hour, about Afro-pessimism. And broadly speaking, I think what your takeaway from this conversation should be is that Frank B. Wilson III has been sharing with us a variety of ways that Afro-pessimism forces us to essentially rethink some of our basic assumptions about society, particularly in this moment. But I was reading another piece, though, in preparation for this conversation that I want to take Frank's temperature on, and that is this notion that, and I read a piece in Axios. If you want to follow me on this, you can go to Axios and read the piece that I read. But the piece is titled, The Missing Black Demonstrators in Anti-Trump Protest. The Missing Black Demonstrators in these anti-Trump protests. We'll get to that part when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Frank B. Woodison III talking about Afro-pessimism. Clearly the stakes are high in this moment, Professor Woodison. Trump 2.0 and its agenda is openly hostile, as you mentioned earlier, to DEI, police reform, civil rights protections that have underpinned racial progress for the last half century. And yet those black folk, those black Americans, those black fellow citizens who flooded the streets in 2020 seem to have stepped back from the renewed anti-Trump protests, torn, I think, between the urgency of the moment and the spiritual toll of relentless and, I might add, oftentimes fruitless resistance. That fits into the Afro-pessimism frame, but tell me how. And what you make of the fact that people are noticing there aren't a whole lot of black folk in these anti-Trump protests.
I would make of the fact that rather than them whining about that, they should ask themselves why.
Yeah.
Now, you know, one needs what I call a synchronic and a diachronic analysis. What I mean by that, one needs a synchronic. It's like a Polaroid snapshot of the paradigm, the here and now relations of power, and then a diachronic means a historical analysis of where we came from and how we got to this place today. And if one were to do that, one would understand, especially at the level of diachronic or historical, that black folks, we have put our lives and our bodies on the line individually and collectively since we rocked up here in the bottom of boats, and we have done it for and with all kinds of other people for all kinds of suffering that is not necessarily essential to what we experience as objects of phobia in the minds. We've done it. We've been tremendously generous in our activism. That's number two. And number three, these folks need to understand that multiracial activist settings are not necessarily the kindest places for black people to exist. And this is one of the ways in which Afro-pessimism actually came about as a lens of analysis. A group of us in Berkeley we're critiquing, as I said before, the inadequacy of economic exploitation to explain the essence of black suffering, number one. And we're also involved in all kinds of political action movements in San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley. And as we tried to raise the question of what is the difference between the police bullet that shoots a non-black immigrant and the police bullet that shoots a black person in Bayview Hunters Point, we were shut down in those spaces as trying to mobilize oppression Olympics. Those spaces should be open. You know, if feminists, for example, said we're not dealing with the woman question enough in this multiracial coalition, no one would in their right mind shut that down to say, you know, you're playing oppression Olympics. But every time black people say there's something we sense that's singular about anti-black violence, and this should be the space. Yeah. This organizing space should be the space where you all are willing to engage that. We get backlash just like we get backlash from Trump. Mm-hmm. And so a black woman after the last election in November said she wasn't going to Washington to protest at his inaugural because she said, you know, the last time he lost and Biden won, y'all thanked black women for doing this and we mobilized and, you know, and yes, it was different. And now we mobilized and I've come to the conclusion that this is what the country is. This is what the country wants. and I'm tired. And she didn't just mean, if you could read her symptomatically, she didn't just mean, I'm tired as an individual. I am tired historically for stepping up to the plate for y'all and y'all not being able to hear me and my, yeah.
No, to that point. I didn't mean to cut you off. To that point, I do want to offer this as our exit question when we come forward. I got just a tight couple of minutes when we come forward in our remaining moments with Professor Wooderson. He's talking about history now and quoting this sister, being tired historically of showing up and oftentimes not receiving anything for it. Here's the exit question when we come forward. What does the historical trajectory, I think that's how I want to frame it. What does the historical trajectory of Black life in America say at this moment about our future? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting rules for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Consult a doctor prior to use.
Wow, you look amazing. What have you been doing?
I'm sure you've heard of Ozempic, Wegovy, and the other GLP-1 medications, right? Well, I found this great company called Zelfie. If you qualify, their providers can prescribe medications like Ozempic and Wegovy and other GLP-1 medications that are 80 to 90% less expensive, all 100% online.
I can get GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% less and do it all online? No doctor's office or pharmacy?
Yes, Zelfie can provide semaglutide or tirzepatide, the active ingredients in Ozempic and other expensive GLP-1s, but for 80 to 90% less and shipped directly to your door.
How do I get started with Zelfie?
Just send them a text.
Text SKINNY to 323232 to get started today with Zelfie. Get the same active ingredients in Wegovy or Ozempic, but for 80 to 90% less and 100% online. Don't wait. Text SKINNY to 323232 right now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text SKINNY to 323232. That's SKINNY to 323232. SKINNY to 323232.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park,
Los Angeles, California.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley, an award-winning writer, poet, and UC Irvine African-American Studies professor Frank B. Wooderson III. We've been talking in this hour about Afro-pessimism. I've got 3 minutes left, 2.5 to be exact. I'll give it all to you. What does the historical trajectory, speaking of, said, what is the historical trajectory of Black life in America say in this moment, Professor, about our future as you see it?
Well, you know, in my 30s, I lived in South Africa in the apartheid era, and I was the second Black American to hold elected office in the African National Congress, and I was a cadre in the underground Mkhonto weSizwe, the Spirit of the Nation, and the armed wing of the ANC. And so I have always been an activist, and that was a revolutionary moment. So once I was a revolutionary, and I have what's called a pessimism of the intellect, which is a pessimism of other people's ways of suffering, ability to explain Black suffering, but I have an optimism of the will. And that's
I love that. I love that.
Optimism of the will, and optimism in the power of Black people to move on the ground and make change. And so I think that one of the nice things about Afro-pessimism is that it has spread its tendrils around the globe. and activist communities on the ground where Black people are suffering in Europe, Africa, Canada, Latin America are reading our work. Some of highly theoretical work is being read by activists on the ground, and it is informing the struggles of these communities. It is also producing a certain kind of solidarity that is not Black nationalism. I'm not saying I want something for Black people and other people don't get it. A solidarity of suffering and an analysis of that of Black people around the world. And I think that something good in terms of the movement on the ground will come out of that. Yeah. It's important in the last second I have for people like us, the Black middle class, not to participate with anxiety in the criminalization of dissent in the streets in the same way that the Republicans do. The challenge is up to us to embrace this thing that's coming and not to demonize or criminalize it.
I received that, and I hope the audience does as well. I love that phrase. I have a pessimism of the intellect, but an optimism of the will. A pessimism of the intellect, but an optimism of the will. Powerfully and beautifully and poignantly said. Frank B. Woodison III, award-winning poet, writer, UC Irvine African-American Studies professor, expert on Afro-pessimism. He has a book by that same title, by the same name, Afro-Pessimism. Find it for yourself and dig a little deeper. Professor Woodison, always an honor to have you on this program, sir. Thank you for your keen insights today. We will do it again somewhere down the road, I pray.
I look forward to it, Tavis. Thank you so much.
As do I. Thank you for your time. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Experience adventure at Palm Springs Aerial Tramway. Ride the world's largest rotating tram car. Explore over 50 miles of scenic trails in pristine wilderness. Dine at 8,500 feet with awe-inspiring views and get that perfect souvenir. Adventure at its peak. Learn more at pstramway.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers got it done last night and they flexed